Welcome to the next breakthrough with Sean Campbell. Today, my guest is Daniel Cox. He's a global data strategist, entrepreneur, and sustainability leader. Now, he's the CEO and founder of Green Parrot Collective, and that's a platform that's focused on sustainability, traceability, and data driven ESG insights. He's also the CEO and founder of Leaf Mark Property and co founder of Symphony Technology. He's a very busy man, apparently, Daniel. He also served as a part time chairman of Ascension Holding Group. And across all of these roles, Daniel's working at the intersection of data governance, supply chain intelligence, and sustainability. And what that means is he's helping organizations to improve the quality, trust, and usability of their data for executive and board level decision making. He has a background that spans enterprise data strategy, master data management, ESG systems, and he focuses on turning complex data environments into reliable foundations for data, for analytics, for automation, and for AI enabled insight. Today, his work is centered on how trusted data and emerging technologies can support leadership decision making and transparent supply chains. So I'm really interested to dive into that with you, Daniel. Welcome.
Sure. Thank you so much, Sean, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
The last time we connected, so it would have been at Mega. So we were at a massive event, over 1,500 entrepreneurs in Los Angeles. You were on stage there interviewing some celebrities, which was quite exciting. Feel free to name
Definitely.
drop, but yeah, that was an amazing event. Spent just a minute or two, maybe covering off a little thing that I didn't cover there.
Oh, I think you covered quite a bit, but yeah, I've got about 30, 35 years of enterprise data strategy. I've built and delivered some of the largest data solutions for federal and state governments across the globe, including some for the Five Eyes, so high security and quite interesting. Um,
So just real quick, for those that are maybe unfamiliar with Five Eyes is, just let them know what the purpose of that organization is, especially now where politics are kind of shaking things up a bit.
Yeah, that's for sure. So Five Eyes are typically the allied or countries. So the U.S., UK, Europe, and Australia. So they share a number of different secret and intelligence agency information and systems and pass information and data through each other to help with security and national security and information and capabilities so that we all stay safe.
Great. Thanks for that. And by your accent, you don't sound Australian today.
No, that's a good pickup. Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in the U.S., near Seattle, so Eastern Washington State. I grew up actually on an orchard, so one of the largest single family ran orchards, and that's really where I got my entrepreneurial spirit was from my father, who was not a farmer when he started out. It was my mother. My father was a baseball player, and then went into the military. Was an officer in Vietnam and flew helicopters and really enabled me to have good leadership skills and always looking for the future and looking at the possibilities of what can happen. And that's really what gave me my entrepreneurial spirit. So really happy that I had that grow up. And so I've been actually September this past year was 21 years that I've been living in Australia.
Wow.
So yeah, I do have a little bit of an accent. I can kind of put it on. When I go back to the States, people say, "Oh, you've got an accent," but when I'm here, I still have my American accent. I'm still a Yank, so I guess I still don't have any country really.
All right. So now you've moved from baseball to cricket, then apparently, right?
Yeah, apparently. No, I can't quite get into cricket, and luckily my son likes baseball over cricket as well. So
I'm year 10 here myself in Australia. I'm also from the States, from Southern California. So I've been up to I've visited Seattle a few times.
yeah.
But yeah, so going back to your background is, you were raised in a military family, someone who's entrepreneurial, and I find that my father also had his own business, so I find that you grow up thinking a little bit differently.
Mm,
Sometimes people are in survival mode. Sometimes people are thinking about building businesses Just give us a sense of how your leadership style developed and what you took from that experience, whether it was playing sports as well. I find that was a
Yeah.
really valuable experience for me when I was growing up in terms of challenging yourself, working with teams, and that sort of thing.
I think those are great points. So when I was 8 years old, my dad actually gave me a plot of land and said, "Here, do what you want with it." He made me do everything responsible. Yes, he helped me out when I asked questions, but I was responsible for everything. Part of it was also organization of all the finances, the books, purchasing chemicals or whatever. So it really made me think globally as far as how to run something, which also included leadership, having labor, thinking about payroll, them before me, etc. So that really gave me a really good foundation. So when I started my own companies here in Australia, that was quite an area that I wanted to make sure that I was doing right, and that was getting an executive community and leadership team, and then training them on that. I'm a very high DC. If you've ever done any disc profiles, so I'm very dominant and analytical. So typically, when I ask a question, I already know the answer. I just want to know if they know what the
And that's a
answer
great
is.
coaching method as well. I do it
It
all the
is.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I prescribe to a lot of what Patrick Lucioni does about first team and the five areas of a leadership team and trust, and making sure that we can all be on the same team, looking to make sure that we're heading towards the right accountability metrics, etc., and looking at how we can bring and build people up. You don't always hire the number one best person for a certain role, right? They may not be available. So you make them into the best person and employee and leadership position. So you do that by training and educating, and every opportunity, every interaction is feedback, and the ability to give them feedback and make them better. So culture is definitely number one. You have to set the culture from the beginning, what it's going to be like, and that has to carry through. And so part of that is pushing forward and making sure that you reiterate that on an ongoing basis in every interaction that you have, both internally and externally.
Yeah, and I think the beauty of that is helping people to be their best selves, right? And gaining that alignment across all the people that are focused on one thing, whatever that thing is for the organization.
Yes.
So yeah, no, it's great advice.
I was just gonna say sometimes, they aren't the best fit. And it's not about firing somebody or sacking somebody, right? It's actually suggesting that they should be more successful somewhere else, right? Because if they're not doing the things or the elements that you believe that need to be done the way the culture is set, they probably aren't the right fit. And so it's abrasive. So instead of getting rid of them. I think that's the wrong attitude. It's they need to find a better place that they can be more successful, and that's what you're really doing is allowing them to leave, allowing them to go and find something that's going to make them even more successful. And if you have that type of attitude and mentality, then people will flock to your organization as well.
You also have to manage your own career as well. So I'll give you an example. I was in a situation where I was in the US working for a software company, SaaS company, and I desired living overseas. I really wanted to live in Asia, and I felt I was looking for any opportunity to move out there. And at the time, there wasn't something specific for that company because they just didn't have, business entities out there. There was really limited business in the region. So I left on very good terms. And then, come forward years later, said, "Hey, we're now in Asia. Do you want to come back?" So you never know, by leaving an organization because maybe the desire that you have, or maybe the fit, as to your point, isn't the right fit at the time. There's always an opportunity to come back if you find the right leaders to work
Absolutely.
with, or the right passion or purpose. Then I think that there's always a ways to go circular, I guess, if that's what you want.
Absolutely. The other piece to that is I have had staff in leadership roles that did leave and thought that the grass was greener on the other side.
That's right.
Uh,
Sometimes it's
and,
not.
And you know what? Amicably, I'm happy for them to go and try, right? But every single one of them, in particular, I believe there was like seven or eight employees over a span of like 2 or 3 years. They all came back. And the reason was is they wanted to work with me again.
Right.
And they knew once they actually went out and saw the rest of the world that it wasn't actually greener. And I talk about this quite a bit about tending your own grass, your own lawn, because it may look greener on the other side of the fence, but they're not taking care of it as well as you're taking care of your own patch. So if you focus on your own patch and take care of it, then people are going to come. And the other part of that is that when people do go off, they get experience and they learn new things and they get a wider area of knowledge base. And when they come back to you, they actually can contribute in a new way and additionally. So I'm always not happy that they leave, but I'm happy that they're going off and getting experience because I know at some point they will want to come back. And I've actually have 3 or 4 new companies that you didn't talk about in the intro. And most of those have been started with ex-employees that I had in one of my companies that I exited out of a couple of years ago. So it's quite nice to know that you've got a good following and great people that want to work with you.
So I've missed a few companies. You're a serial entrepreneur then. So like,
Yeah,
how do you, I
definitely.
mean, with so much going on, how do you distinguish between a good idea, business that can actually scale versus maybe something that's not a great idea?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think every idea is actually a good one. It's just a matter of the timing and application of that idea and vision. I'm quite fortunate that I've been able to see certain elements into the future, and I contribute that to my faith and God giving me those visions of particular businesses and knowing that he's given me those and I push forward and I can actually say yes, well, he's not going to give me that without giving me the resources to move that forward. There obviously are gut feelings as well that you have to look at, as well as the data. And yes, even though I'm very data driven, I still at the end of the day have a gut decision as well as to, well, I may go against the data and say, I really think there's something here and we're missing something. So I might push forward on it. But it is about getting that time to set aside. And I think it's extremely important. People in our position that are entrepreneurs or at strategic levels in an organization, we must make time to think and set aside that time on a regular basis because we're always busy, right? We always have an extra task to do, another email to do, but we rarely set aside or block time out just to think. And I think it's extremely important. And most people don't do it because it's hard. It's a difficult skill to think and go through things analytically and say, okay, at the end of this, I'm going to have this type of an outcome and based off of that outcome, then that's the direction I need to go.
It's go slow to go fast, right? So if you ever
Yes.
notice that your best ideas come when you're in the shower or in the bathroom or, on a walk in the forest or camping, I'm sure you have these ideas that come to you because your brain has an opportunity to actually relax and clear out some of the noise, right? I find that just going and like I go cycling quite a bit. When I'm on my bike, I have the best ideas or ideas for what I'm going to do for the day. So I think, yeah, you definitely have to slow down and just not just being reactive. Something related to this, I was talking to somebody yesterday about this, is that this whole, obviously you're into data and AI and people are starting to rely on AI a lot for even, young generations are relying it for emotional support. Aside of that, which to me is just mind blowing and very strange, I think having the data there and having an AI to respond to you immediately has a danger of weakening people's strategic thinking and just taking
Mm,
things as fact. So I think
yes.
that idea that you said, you have to kind of slow down and make sure you make time for actual thinking. Now you can use it as an assistant, whether you're trying to figure out what's the next best stage, it's almost like you can have an executive team, you can kind of bounce ideas back and forth with the AI, but it shouldn't replace your internal critical thinking skills and your level of discernment and just like taking time to put aside for that.
Absolutely, completely agree with that. AI still needs to have a direction. AI will give you back what it thinks you want, right? So unless you have that discernment, unless you have that intuition, unless you have that critical thinking, you're gonna possibly do what the AI says, and it may not be actually a good idea. So, yeah, it's quite important to set aside that time.
And I think people are learning, the first when ChatGPT came out, it was quite like a magical experience for a lot of people. But then people start to ask, okay, well, what is the data trained on? Are they using my data to train on it? Like, is it really giving me those accurate responses? Is it just agreeing with me all the time, no matter what I say? I think those are all valid concerns. So yeah, there's definitely looking
You
at other technologies, other AIs, and I think the bias in training as well is an issue. As you get into larger organizations, there's definitely those concerns around privacy and governing the data and the things that you work with, obviously around
Yeah.
sustainability.
AI governance is a huge topic now, especially for tier ones and governments. Yeah, I mean, for years, I mean, since the 1970s, we've had data management and data governance. And that's been a very big industry to make sure that data is governed properly. Security, access, storage, lineage, the ability to trace a transaction and its provenance, etc., and make sure that it is actually accurate. Are the financials that people publish really true? Is ESG information greenwashed, right? So, all of that is extremely important. And with AI, it's even more important to have that governance because we don't know where that information is coming from, especially if it's open to interpretation and or open to information that's coming external from an organization. And AI is not going to fix your data, not by itself. Absolutely. Sure, you can set up commands and prompts and workflows with AI to help you to clean up your data, which is much faster and quicker. But still, data quality measures, you need to understand, what the data is going to be used for, the context for that data, and make sure then that the data is accurate and cleaned according to particular preventative or remediation rules and procedures. Once that data is accurate, then the ability to actually run AI over the top of that for your reporting, for your sales information, let's say for a sales department, is extremely important and okay. Then but again, AI has the ability to go around certain security measures as well. AI implemented inside of an organization must also abide by the security metrics, security protocols, the access limits, etc., just like any other application does. And so that's a big area that I know a number of my colleagues are dealing with, and I help consult on those with at executive and leadership teams as well.
So you have a unique experience, a little bit, I mean, where you're dealing with the larger companies and the governments, but you also know what it's like to start a brand new startup. So that's they're
Yes.
very different worlds, right? And so you mentioned that it's important to have your data clean so you can do perform that analysis. If you have somebody that's a small business owner that's starting out, or just maybe they've been operating business for a few years, a lot of those things can be very intimidating around the data
Yeah.
management, around, governance and obviously, like you said, you're every day you're busy as an entrepreneur. Do you think that they should be able to start with AI or do they have to start with the data cleanup first? What's your thoughts on that?
Both.
Build
Both.
build the plane while it's taking
Yeah,
off, I guess.
yeah. I mean, I don't think they should wait to get to start using their AI after they get their data clean. I think they should use it at the same time, right? But what they need to be mindful of the fact that they can't necessarily say that yes, that dollar amount that is actually shown through the AI is actually accurate. Be wary of that until you do finish off your data cleansing exercises if you need to. Smaller entrepreneurs and that those types of cleansing and quality checks are fairly simplistic and able to be done in a couple of days, right? So just with some time and some understanding, some knowledge. But really, it's about thinking about data as a language, and I talk about this and I have talked about this for quite some time, that data is a language. And if you treat it like one, then it'll actually come out and be able to tell you a story. And I have 6 principles for it, if I can jump in on that. So the 6 principles of data as a language. So one is data importance. So you need to understand what the story is going to tell, right? So each executive or each entrepreneur, they started their business, their department, their organization for a particular purpose. That's their story. So what data behind that story, what metric or metrics are really important, and because not all data is important. You may want to save all your data, you may want to collect all the data, but it's not necessarily important information. So if we're thinking about all of the information and keeping and collecting and trying to quality all the information, then yes, it's a completely daunting task. But if you focus on the number one thing, which is what is important, then we can focus on that selection of data. Then we can apply data governance rules. Things like, well, do I want a CRM entry for my lead to have these fields and be all complete? Right? So 100% complete, all the fields. So that's a governance role. Or duplications. Data governance. So language needs standards, right? So as we learned English and we have grammar, so does data. Data needs some sort of guidance and some sort of standards. Then you have literacy. So what information is actually important? How's it governed? And then how do I read it? So data literacy is quite important. So what metrics do I want? Sales metrics, top line information, EBITDA. Does everybody know what EBITDA is? What EBIT is? What depreciation means, etc. So how do I read that data and educate the rest of my teams on that information? So then when they pull information, they can understand what they're actually reading and seeing and take action properly. Then lineage as well. So data lineage. So being able to say, okay, this might be the metric, revenue per customer, right? And that's a calculation, but how does that derive? Where does it actually come from? So being able to follow that information, and that's quite important because then the AI can understand that, all right, and understand the provenance of that information and then the quality of that information. Stewardship. So in larger organizations, stewardship of the data needs to be set aside. So who's accountable for that information, right? So if it's a CRM system, it's not going to be the IT department that is accountable for the information. They might be accountable for the
Infrastructure.
status
Yeah.
of the application, right? Whether it's up and running, et cetera, and definitely the infrastructure, the security around that. But it's the sales department or the chief sales officer that is responsible for the information, the accuracy, and the usage of that data, right? And so that's quite important. Now, for entrepreneurs, it's our data. We have to be responsible for it, right? As we grow, we can say, okay, my chief marketing officer, yes, you're responsible for all the data coming in from all the socials, etc. Data quality then is the last one. So how accurate is your information? So being able to put preventative things in to make sure that you get all the information that you need to make this complete. So when we talk about that, that rolls right back to the very first one, which is data importance and what story are you trying to tell? So
Interesting. Yeah, I was exposed, let's say, to sustainability, not to the depth that you are. I worked at a company. It was a resorts and spa company out in Southeast Asia, Oman, Jordan, and Vietnam, and Maldives. So I had nice trips, let's say, for business
yeah,
meetings.
for sure.
But I rolled out a program called Living Slow Life, and it was all about sustainability. They're one of the leaders in hospitality around sustainability, and they had sustainability managers at every resort, every property, in a corporate office. And it wasn't just about the data, but it was about the culture as well. So you had to have this
Mm,
combination of the program of rolling out the kind of mindset, the values, the culture, but also making sure operationally you were supported by the data and had some kind of system to collect it. Now, at that time, this is many years ago, so it was very manual. The sustainability people would write it down and it would bring it up. But what I find is that, there's always a difference between data and insight. You can
Mm.
collect data and it can sit there dead and no one's really paying attention to it. And it's like, why am I submitting my report every week? And really, when you find out nobody's really reading it and nobody's taking action on it. So it has to have both parts, right? Somebody has to actually use the data. Otherwise, you're just creating administrative burden on the organization. Later on, I was at Salesforce and they had Net Zero Cloud. And we started to look at how you collect data for larger organizations and you can grab reports and look at the different scopes for tracking your kind of your impact. It's a combination of those things, right? It's definitely one side. It's the people. It doesn't change. It's the standard people, process, tech stuff. You know, you have to put all of those three things in place. Otherwise, you're just creating admin.
Absolutely, and that comes back to the very first principle, what's important, and understanding what's gonna move that dial for you. So if you have data and it's not gonna move the dial, then yes, we if we're gonna keep it, we still have to secure it and properly maintain access, but it's not important as far as what we wanna action on. So making sure that, we have that upfront, talking about, okay, what is it that we actually need in order to move that forward. Yeah, sustainability. Yeah, it used to be extremely manual to collect all that ESG type of information and do the reporting. Obviously, it's getting much more automated, especially with all the different systems available out there and being able to do that type of reporting. It's has to start with the board members or the executive team as far as the culture, and it has to be part of it. Otherwise, it's lip service. Same thing with a data driven type of organization. It has to start with the board member. It has to start with the CEO to set that tone and that culture. So same with sustainability and ESG. If it's not important to them, it's not going to be important to the rest of the organization, no matter how hard somebody might try to push.
So looking big picture, there's I'll just say certain world leaders less on the ESG sustainability initiatives as was. I remember years ago, it was a very important focus of a lot of governments, you know, getting to carbon neutrality, ensuring that supply chains are transparent. Now you're hearing different, I would say murmurs, but that's probably not the right word. It's more like, you know, shouting, I think, around that, like, US going into Venezuela. There seems to be like the world has forgotten the importance of reducing carbon emissions. You're in Australia, but you're also an American. What's your thinking
Mm.
around this ESG in general, and where do you think companies will either look at it as a necessary compliance thing they have to deal with versus actually taking action on their supply chains that really does make a difference?
So it's quite interesting because yes, I'm Australian. Yes, I'm American. Yes, I'm a farmer. Yes, I'm an entrepreneur. Yes, I'm a conservative. Yes, I'm a liberal. So I'm actually quite a dichotomy on this particular issue because I think there are certain elements that we need to focus on, and some that are less needed. And of course, well, I wouldn't say less needed. I would say that other metrics are probably a little bit more important at that particular point in time. Growing up on a farm, I'm very conservationist, right? So even back in the early 70s, we were looking at ways to change irrigation mechanisms, right? From overhead sprinklers to micro sprinklers or drip sprinklers, changing the way we did fertilizer or pest control. And my parents were one of the first, along with a few of the neighbors, to become wholly organic in certain blocks. So certain blocks that have been organic since the early 70s, and that was a new thing. So really, a lot of those types of things don't have certifications; they're just proclaimed. Especially if you go to, let's say, a farmer's market. Oh, it's organic. I grew these tomatoes myself. Uh huh. And that's why you have a bottle of Roundup or Raid next to the right. It's not a chemical to them, right? So they don't quite understand.
I'll insert something here. I will say that basically, when you start looking at that new sprinkler system or new irrigation or new ways of working, there's probably two motivations. One is you want to take care of the land that's going to renew, right? Number two is you want to reduce costs and be more efficient. So I
Yeah.
don't think that being efficient is, on the other end of being sustainable. I think
No, I
reality,
agree.
if you remove the maybe the trigger words, if you want to call it that, of certain people, when you talk about sustainability or ESG or supply chain, you're actually using your resources the best you can in
Correct.
order to produce the most output, which is
Correct.
capitalism, basically. It's like you're making
Yeah.
sure you're producing the most with what you have. And I think
100%. I completely agree with that. Yes, being conservative, looking at, okay, how can I make sure that I have enough water this year as well as next year, especially in Australia, looking at different mechanisms to save water, but also it is a marketing element as well as a top line revenue element being okay if it's organic then I get a premium for that organic, right, which means I get more revenue, which means I'll be able to use a bit more of that for the capital expenditure is, and I also look at sustainability as very broad. So things like ethical manufacturing, employment, wellness and health, nutritional elements of the food that we eat, or even the clothing that we wear. Because it's 24 hours a day. We've got something on, right? So how does that rub into our skin and affect our skin? Yes, of course, greenhouse emissions. So part of what Green Parrot does is a high level. We look at the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals and assess each of the organizations that come on as a client against those, as well as the basically 120 different taxonomies globally for their different industries and locations, etc. But that is our main framework. So how do they actually apply to that? So it's not just their impact for scope one, scope two, scope three, but it's also around what are they doing for themselves and for the planet and for their communities around. One of the things that we do is a loyalty program. As soon as you hit a certain point, then we actually do plant a tree in your name, and you can monitor that. But it's not just a evergreen tree, let's say, or a pine tree. It could be actually helping out a farmer in Uganda to plant new almond trees or pistachio trees. So we can buy a whole bunch of trees for them, which does the exact same thing as a pine tree, but it's actually productive as well. So there's definitely two sides of it. We have to obviously making sure that from an entrepreneurial spirit that we're moving that forward, that we're helping other people, that we're creating jobs as well as creating economics, as well as then being conservationists, making sure that planet is taken care of, that we're doing the little things. I mean, just cleanup of beaches or the fact that we can recycle now, right? Instead of throwing it away into the rubbish bin and into a tip for landfill. So just simple things like that are things that, growing up on the farm as well, we didn't throw anything away. We recycled bottles and nails, right? We reused them. We've gone away from that quite a bit in the 80s and 90s, especially in the construction. That's why I also set up my own construction company, Leafmark Property, because I want a sustainable quality homes, not just from a new build where we're using insulation because the standards here in Australia are pretty poor. I mean, we're still using single pane glasses. I'm just looking at my office window and single pane glass. I'm like, in the US, we had double and triple panes since the late 70s, early 80s. So just simple things like that. But also when we're doing construction, it's easier for the builders and carpenters. If it drops on the floor, they just get swept up and into the skip bin and off. But it's all good material still. So we can still use it, even that off cut of gyprock. I like to keep it. I'm just that way. Why don't we use it again? Right? I'm sure there's going to be patches that we need. So let's not throw it away. So just those types of simple things make the whole planet and everything that we do much better. Yes, does it cost a little bit more to pick up the nail than it does to just sweep it into the rubbish bin? Yes, but it's a service that I can actually hire somebody, even, a 16-year-old to come and clean up and pick out screws, etc., which I'm creating jobs then as well as sustainable protocols.
regardless if you're on one side of the political realm or another, we can all agree we are a part of an ecosystem. Like we
Yeah.
are in this planet together and it's all connected. So things that you might pick up that nail now or not, those decisions do have downstream impacts because you're making that investment to say, hey, maybe I can reuse this thing and actually I'll save costs later. There's other benefits there. It's just understanding that we're all on the same planet here. We have to take care of it. Now we can all debate around what's the best way to do it, but I think we can all agree that, people are being impacted. You can see certain nations are being impacted more than others.
Mm.
You can see more powerful weather events. You can see that people are getting impacted by the cost of things. So there's a lot of factors, of course, that is very complex. So in that kind of macro environment, what's your main focus going into 2026? Where are you going to be focused on, whether it's supply chain transparency or cleaning data for others or even AI? You've got a lot going on. What's going to be
Yeah.
your focus?
Well, my main is definitely Green Parrot. So, Green Parrot is a sustainability rating for brands and services. And really, that's about getting information to the consumer or buyer of that product or service to actually make a point of behavioral change at point of choice, a point of purchase, to say, yes, I want to buy this sustainable service or product as opposed to this other one. And by that, it's a capitalist and voting by the public. And 89% last year in March 2025. A couple of studies came out, including Gartner, around what people were willing to pay for. And 89% of the population that was surveyed across the globe actually did say that they would pay something in excess to pay for a sustainable product. Now, in actual reality, because the way economics actually do occur at the moment, and some places more than others, inflation, etc., it's around 17% that actually do pay, literally do pay for premium for a sustainable product. But we know that that trend is ever increasing. So we know that people want that transparency. They want that information to actually see that and make that choice. Now, whether they decide to buy the sustainable product or not, because it is more expensive and maybe at that point in time they can't afford it. So they buy the other product. That's perfectly fine. But they were able to get that information to make that informed choice. And part of that is about education, about making not only our clients, which are the brands and services, accountable for their programs, but it's also about really seeing what those programs are starting to do. It's not about being net zero now or in 5 years. It's about, okay, I've got these programs. I want to do this, and we're heading towards this. How do we monitor that? How do we see what that is? And again, it's about sustainability, the whole spectrum of what the programs could be. So it's not just about greenhouse emissions gases, but it can be about ethical manufacturing, anti-slavery. It can be about organics as well, which of course is quite good. We have one client focused on is the health of the soil. So the nutrients in the soil, and what they've seen over the last few years, four in particular, is that when they focused on the health of the soil, the microbes, etc., the plants that are produced are healthier. Which means the fruit and the vegetables that come off of that production is actually healthier. And believe it or not, when they focused on that, their production quadrupled. And now, so we're comparing the nutrients of, let's say, corn and beans, and that actually compared to others, and it's phenomenally different and so much better for us. So that's what they're focused on. But part of that means that since they're focused on the health of the soil, they do organics. They have livestock that have GPS tracking on no fences whatsoever, right? It's all based off of a vibrating collar. So they can change the livestock into different regions very easily. And so all of that is accumulated into sustainability programs. So,
And I'm
yeah.
sure there's AI embedded in all of those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
All the
Absolutely.
tracking and the governance around it.
So,
What do you think is the next breakthrough that's necessary so that the consumer can have that complete transparency with products, whether you're going to the grocery store or you're looking at buying a piece of clothing, or like, how do you, because today we read labels but a lot of labels are very cryptic, right? So
Yes.
sometimes you're not sure what you're reading unless you have a degree in whatever manufacturing, certain chemicals or whatever. What do you think's necessary to really drive this forward so every consumer has that really at the point of purchase, that immediate barcode, QR code, something that tells them,
Yeah.
hey, this is a good choice versus maybe not so good choice.
Well, as far as a breakthrough, I think there are a number of technologies that are available now that we can accumulate, which is blockchain, which is AI, which is transparency and provenance capabilities, traceability. So with Green Parrot, we have a star rating, so very clear and easy to understand, 1 to 5 stars, the logo and a QR code to be able to dynamically see that information at point of choice, whether it's in a store or digital on a website, Amazon, etc. So that way, it is available at time of purchase. Now, what we're trying to do with the UIs is make it extremely straightforward, consumer friendly. They can understand the information. There's no cryptic information. A lot of our competitors are very science driven. Nothing wrong with that, but most people don't understand the GHG calculations, right? So, how does it actually show them their own impact? If they purchase this, what's part of their basket? How does that actually affect them, their community locally, and affect the downstream? Part of that is it's the logo, QR code, and rating is blockchain, so that we can also help eliminate secondary fraud, impersonation, and greenwashing as well. So that ability helps to set the standard of trust, and I think that's a huge one because we had such huge greenwashing issues over the last ten years. Trust has been eroded for the ESG type reporting and sustainability. But if we're independent and we can set that standard, then I think that's the biggest breakthrough because part of it comes is the education of how to use it. So I think that's really huge around that. I don't know about a technology breakthrough. We've got AI combined with blockchain, combined with, just the transparency. And I think part of it is not necessarily taking on the scope of an entire supply chain of a single product at once, but actually looking at it as a jigsaw puzzle, saying, okay, for this manufacturer, we can put a box around and say, yes, we can do all that. When we bring on, let's say, a distributor or transport, let's say Maersk or Kawasaki, as opposed to KitKat or Nestle, then that's another box that we've actually filled. And then the downline distribution. So then that starts to combine that data and fit that jigsaw puzzle in and start to complete that full picture. And that I think is the best way to actually tackle this type of issue because then we're not focused on one single element all the way through, which is very difficult and that element's going to change because distribution channels, supply chains change. But if we focus on the jigsaw pieces, then it doesn't really matter if they change because they'll still fit together.
Makes sense. Well, thank you so much for the work you do in that area. I think as a consumer who does make those conscious decisions when I go to the grocery store or otherwise, always thinking about the impact you potentially might have with your purchases and actually do you need to purchase it. Maybe you have something at
Mm.
home you can reuse. Really appreciate talking with you today about this area and look forward to hearing more about it. If people want to get in contact with you, what type of customers would be the best to reach out to you and have this conversation around taking a
Anybody.
size of
Yeah,
business
for Green Parrot,
goals?
it's just yeah, we do just about anything. So we do industrial goods, we do financial services, consulting services, we do prime producers. So yeah, fruits and vegetables. We do manufacturing. So Nestle, KitKat, Unilever, etc. So anyone, whether you're a small manufacturer with one or two products, all the way to the very large, it doesn't matter because we can do and go across anything. So we haven't launched officially in ANZ. We have launched in Europe to get a very strong viral footprint there, and then coming back later this year in 2026 and fully launching in Australia. We've got a few clients out of the UK, Europe, a few clients in the US, and Singapore, etc. So it doesn't matter. We are global from the start, and yeah, just
I
getting
know a lot
contact.
of the, manufacturers are in China, right? And I know
No,
some of the companies in Australia will rely on those relationships as well. So it might be, interesting to see how you would work, between Australia to, that area of the world.
I absolutely agree. Southeast Asia and China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, absolutely.
I think I have someone to connect you with. So,
Wonderful.
yeah. Well,
Excellent.
thank you so much, Daniel. I really appreciate the conversation and, look forward to either seeing you at the next event or next time you're out in Melbourne.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure we'll connect. Thank you so much, Sean. Appreciate it. And hope this was valuable to your audience.
Thank you. I'm sure it was.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.